All right, welcome back. Possibly chiaroscuro, possibly not. Well, we don't know. We're still throwing around some names, but
We're tossing
uh,
things around.
I am still Sterling.
I am still Mark, and we are here to talk to you guys about Utopia.
Yeah. So last week we just did one episode of the U.S. version in order to help catch the show up a little bit. I do still think that the UK version is a little bit ahead, but this week what we did was we watched the US episode 5 versus the UK episode 4. They're definitely a little bit closer at this point, and we're going to do a little bit more compare and contrast, as well as just kind of a general breakdown and our thoughts on it. So, with that being said, let's jump in.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you that this is. I think that the UK version is still a little farther ahead, but like, good thing we didn't watch them together, because then it would have just gone off the rails. We would have just been, I don't know what's going on.
And I think we would have seen some things in the US version that I would have preferred to see in the UK version first, because obviously I enjoy the UK version a little bit more. And so for me personally, I would like to see some of that done in the UK version and have that surprise done right than the US version.
I agree. I think the US version still definitely has the problem of like bloat. Like it just has a little bit too much. Specifically, we'll jump right into talking about Dwight Schrute's character. I don't know his name, but we'll just call him Dwight Schrute's character. Doctor guy, he goes in. We see that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. So last week I talked about she didn't have the T rash. We know why she didn't have the T rash, because she was not infected. We also know that why they let the doctor in so easily. That's my assistant. He comes if I come. Which, thank God Dwight said that. If he didn't say that, well, I guess that doctor's gonna get left out, and then the whole plan falls apart. Like, it all required Dwight Schrute to be like, not without my guy, not without my buddy I just met at this protest. What are the what are the odds that I'd meet him and be here?
Right. You've got to love those plans that are basically like Rube Goldberg machines, where if any one tiny piece, somebody makes a slightly different decision from what you meticulously planned, the whole thing goes out the window. And this didn't feel quite that level, but it still was like that's a major breaking point where if that goes wrong, your plan is effed.
Correct. And so then we also got a little bit more. We got that there were twin. She was a twin, which was important, and we see that the doctor that Dwight Schrute brought in with him was actually working with John Cusack's character. He he has these two girls that he raised. An interesting line they said is that they say something like, we raise good children, essentially, and that was referring to one of these two daughters that basically these kids were ready to just kill. Like, one of them was like set, like, oh, I'm gonna die for this. We see him make the vaccine. He rushes it off. At first, he doesn't want to make the vaccine, with John Cusack's character, and then he
Right.
does for this one random stranger guy. You know what? Forget ethics this time. I'm gonna do it because this, that, and the other. Gives her the vaccine. And he shoots the dying one with the vaccine, right?
He does.
Meaning it doesn't even work. His vaccine.
Or, well, I mean, this could be a spoil for the UK side of things. It turned out on the UK side that it wasn't actually viral, that it was chemical. So it's possible that whatever these kids got was something that wouldn't have been testable as a living organism. So it might have been made to look like the T virus or whatever it's called.
That's actually a very good point. And we did see her ingest I don't know if you saw that, it was a little wafer, and I don't know what you saw on the wafer. Was that a QR code on the
It
wafer?
it did look like a QR code.
Right? Like why? Like scan this to get your disease. Just follow the link. That makes a lot of sense. But QR
Yeah.
code on the wafer, or even a printing on the wafer. Like why any print it? Like why waste the time to print anything on it unless that's the chemical in it? And then you have to figure out how did he get all of these wafers to all these other children that were getting sick with it.
So this group definitely is giving off culty vibes at this point. When we saw John Cusack's family many episodes ago at the table, they hold hands. I assume that they're about to do a prayer, and instead they do this whole, "What have you done to earn your place in this? What is it, crazy world?" And it definitely seems like a thing that they do on a regular basis. But that didn't seem culty yet. But then when you saw at the table with the son, as they're doing the meeting with the whiteboard, they also say some kind of culty things, and they say it all at the exact same time.
What did you
Now
do
we're
to earn your place in
seeing
the world?
now we're seeing this family saying that. We're seeing very clear allusion to religion with, what looks like the body of Christ, although obviously I assume this has some other kind of connotation. And so it's definitely giving off some culty vibes. But, a question that I've been thinking about, but I haven't been able to quite put a finger on what it means. I've had this question banging around in my head. They keep calling them the harvest.
Yeah.
What are they harvesting? You harvest a crop. Like you sow seed, you work, you plow, you're doing all of this work, and after you've done all of this work, and after, however long the season is, the amount of time, it might be years before you're able to get your first harvest. You finally harvest.
Right.
What is the harvest? Not the group. Like,
Right.
what are they harvesting? I've been kicking this around in my head for some time,
But
and I
that's what
almost think
but that's what they
it's
say in the one episode. They say we grow
we
good
grow
children.
children.
We grow good children.
I think I think that's the harvest.
That they're growing these children, and then they harvest them like Arby. We see Arby. He's part of
Right.
this. Jessica Hyde, you could say, was part of this. We definitely saw a lot more of that we'll get to in a little bit.
And then they're able to nourish the world with the actions that the harvest takes. That's kind of
Interesting.
my thoughts.
I like that. I want to hear your thought on the scene right after the girl is cured, and she goes right out to the press and makes her great speech of how this doctor cured her and how wonderful it was. I do see a lot of similarities with this vaccine that we know is probably not going to work with the Russian flu vaccine that they're making. In the UK version, they're making the Russian flu vaccine. It's not going to work either because it's a chemical thing. And I think at one point in the episode they even say, or somebody says that it's the Russian vaccine is not going to work,
Right.
which is curious in my mind, that we have these vaccines that seems like they're going to make a lot of money off of that are not going to do anything.
But here's the thing: if what they're controlling is a chemical instead of a virus, so they don't have to worry about it spreading, then they can stop that at any point as they're rolling out the vaccine and make it seem like, look at how effective it is. We've been giving out the vaccine to everybody, and all of a sudden, this thing has stopped. So they don't
Very good point.
even. I mean, it could be just about nothing inside of there if the problem isn't actually a vaccine. That was something that kind of confused me at one point with the US one, except for now that I'm kind of thinking of it as a chemical reaction rather than a vaccine, is that I think that's got to be one of the worst weapons, because we've seen that vaccines can easily cross borders. So,
Right.
like create or not vaccines, sorry, viruses can easily
Oh,
cross
right. Yeah.
borders. So, like creating viruses to attack your enemy is like throwing a hive of wasps at them. Like, yes, they're going to be hit first, but if you threw it, you're close
They're
enough.
coming back.
They're coming back at you.
Which is true.
So I was
And
very confused with like, oh, all these countries are like making viruses. It's the next bit of warfare, and it's like, what?
right. And also the UK version also has that other like kind of underlying thing that says that the vaccine will only work for certain races.
Right.
So like it seems like in the UK version they're going more of a, it seems to me like the UK version is, the Mr. Rabbit character is trying to ethnically purify the world, kind of do the same thing that the US version is doing, which I think they're trying to just save the world from climate change, essentially. To kind of not frame them, but just going about it in a very poor way. And then so the UK version, it's more of like that we can control what the population looks like at the end of this.
Yeah. There's some. I think that especially the UK version, is still holding its cards very close to its chest.
Agreed.
And whereas I feel like the US version it feels to me like they don't trust their audience, and they're explaining things in a very clear way so that you aren't confused. And yes, there are still surprises that they're holding back. There's definitely still some things that we're going to be hit with at some point in the future. But when they are ready to, kind of show us something, it's shown very clearly. It's like, it's not just like, here's what it is. It's like, and here's how it happened. And here's the people that were involved. Here's a diagram, like.
Yeah, and I think they show that best actually with Becky's deals. So, one thing I caught when I was watching the UK Utopia version. We've been having this theory about Becky kind of being this like double agent, this, kind of thing, and I don't necessarily believe that the UK version is that anymore. I think that one thing I saw in the recap that I had forgotten about is when she's talking to, and I think this was the first episode, when she's talking to those people about Utopia, or dystopia, no, Utopia, that's the US version. She says that my dad had deals. And we see that the Becky in the US version, she suffers from deals. Like she has mentioned that she has deals, and she's, we see her, have these episodes. And this time we saw this Becky taking medication. And we saw her run out of it. And when she called somebody later, she said, "I'm in trouble." So I think she's talking to Jessica Hyde's dad. And I think that he made a cure, like an ingestible cure for deals. And when she called him on that phone, she said, "I'm in trouble." And I don't think she means about the harvest. I think she means about running out of meds for deals. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like the situation that they're in is that much more dire.
Right.
So, so why would she wait until then? I mean, yes, they've lost Jessica Hyde, so I guess that has amped it up a little bit. They're forced to manage on their own, so they had to find that house on their own.
One
So it
thing
has
about
been,
that, when they saw that house, I thought that was a very cool shot when they were coming up into that house. It was like the way with the trees and the light and how it was like dark in there. Like, oh man, I really enjoyed that aesthetic as they were coming up to that house. But and another thing, yeah, I do think that they are very much the UK version of like the main company of heroes. They're more taking action, where the other group in the UK or the US version, they're kind of just being dragged along and they don't really take action. They don't really do anything for themselves. They're kind of just like side characters that you take on a mission with you.
yeah, yeah. It really doesn't feel like they are fleshed out people making their own choices. They're in a situation and they're just, I don't know, going wherever the wind blows them. Like they're helpless. They don't really seem like they're contributing a ton. Versus, I think with this last episode, we saw the group have to take care of themselves without Jessica Hyde and make decisions about where to go and figure out how they're going to entertain themselves and what they're going to do to manage stresses. Now they've got another mouth to feed who's kind of losing it. They have a girl that's entered into their group. This young girl watched her mom brutally murdered in front of her, and she has been living this lush life. It seems like she goes to like a private school. It seems like she's well educated, got a nice home, nice mom, and all of a sudden that's been ripped away from her. And she cannot comprehend it. With everything that's going on, she's worried about an essay she has to write,
Right.
you know? And I don't think that nobody wants to take anything else away from her. So nobody's telling her like, you, school's gone, your friends are gone, your life is gone, like all of that's gone. So it's
Right.
like let's give her this one thing. It's the stupidest thing to give her. Here's paper so you can work on this essay that we're probably not going to turn in for you. You're never going to see the teacher again. She is losing it over this, and then she realized she doesn't have the book and she doesn't remember this character's name, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? Like
Yeah.
it's it's kind of sad seeing her go through that and then seeing the decisions that the group has to make about that. Wilson is like that. I
Let her
don't
go.
want to do it. She's a liability.
Right. Yeah, having this extra person, having Grant as a kid. Grant is pretty scrappy. He kind of knows what's going on. He's already had to deal with, they're not called Harvest in the UK version. He's already had to deal with some of that. So like Grant is a little bit more reliable, but this is just like a little girl. This is a little child that like that has been kind of like pampered, like you were saying, and so I could rationally understand why Wilson would be like, yeah, I don't think that this is a good thing to do, to take her with us. Speaking of Wilson, we had some more jokes about Wilson in the US version, talking about
Sure.
Arby. Maybe he ate my eyeball. He says doesn't seem too upset about his eyeball. Every episode he has a new eye patch on. Like he's just going through eye patches like it's nothing. But I will say that the Wilson in the UK version, he's already grown since the last episode we saw him. And a specific, way that I'm thinking about is like he had that gun where he was up against the just some guy from that group, and he's like, ready to like shoot this guy, and then this time he like saws off the shotgun. He's thinking in his mind he's going to see Mr. Rabbit, and he's got that gun right to his head, and it's like no shaking, confident, he's ready. It's beautiful character growth. The US version, not as great character growth. I also think how they handled the response of finding out his family died. The US version, I feel like, yeah, he was upset. There was more people that died in the US version for him. He was upset, but not like really upset. And then we find out that Ian's family has been poisoned or whatever. And again, not Becky's family though. We didn't hear anything about
Right.
Becky's family.
And that's when he lost it. Is when he realizes, everybody has had something bad happen to them except for her, and he now thinks maybe she's a plant, and he just flips out. His character seems like, in the US version, seems like he lives in extremes. It's extreme comedy or extreme, like, over the top yelling, screaming type stuff. There's none of those. He doesn't have a middle.
Yeah, I agree.
He just has extremes. Which, and when you don't have those middles to kind of be able to compare and contrast the extremes with, it dulls down the extremes. If you're always extreme, then that's kind of the normal. And so it would take being really extreme for that to actually feel extreme at that point.
The actor for the UK version of Wilson Wilson, when he reacted to his family dying, like, man, that got me. He was just like, he was so emotional about it. He was ready to turn on everyone there. He was like, you knew about this, you knew about this, you could have told me, you're not my friends, you guys don't give a shit about me, you guys don't care. Like, why am I doing any of this for you guys? You just lied to me for days. And nobody said anything to me. Who can I trust here? Like, the amount of betrayal that he probably felt in that moment, and also already being in that stuck moment, man, I just feel like that actor conveyed that so well, and he did such a great job with that.
And going back to what I just said, because he's not just always at those extremes, when he finally did have that moment, it hits for you because you measure that against how he normally is, and it's like, holy crap, he's been affected by this.
Right, right, definitely has. Ian on both sides, I would say, the U.S. Ian, he's in that moment with Becky with the deals. See, and you had mentioned last time that this show has a lot of love for the other show. And I think they were trying to show that with, like, Becky and Ian went on a little date in the UK version, and they had a cute little bathtub moment, and were reading horoscopes, and they're telling these characteristics about these characters that I did not recognize because these characters are kind of just flat a little bit. And so he's like, oh, I'm this, this, and this. You know this because I'm telling you this. Like, that's the other thing, they don't trust the audience. They're telling you, they're spoon feeding you the information.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate kind of in the portrayal where I want to have to do a little work myself or be trusted to be smart enough to figure out a few things, on my own. When you connect all the dots for me, and it's also it takes extra time, and I think hurts the pacing, when you have to explain things that I can put together from what we've seen. A few smart visuals can do so much more than a bunch of words trying to explain something.
I agree. The other thing about Ian, so we got two different Ians going on. We got incompetent Ian, scaredy cat Ian, and some other things he said in the horoscope. And then we have take action Ian. We have action hero Ian, who went to go check on his brother, and that was kind
It
of
was a dumb decision, but he made a decision on his own.
right.
I don't think US Ian has the backbone to do that. I think that UK Ian, very dumb. He was putting himself and his brother at risk, but he at least made a decision.
Right. And here's an interesting thought about that. Okay. We have Ian that made dumb move, right? He's going to go check on his brother, and we see him like kind of looking around. We don't know who's part of what. We don't know what's part of what. But you're telling me Harvest, who basically has Milner on lock, in a way, which I have an interesting theory. So Milner has them on lock, right? Harvest has, or not Harvest, because the UK version isn't Harvest yet that we know of. They are super smart. They have guys on this person. They couldn't tell Ian was the homeless man, yet they know what Ian's brother looks like. They know how to follow him. But Milner knew he was there because he called earlier, but like, how did she know that he was there later? Like, how was she able to pick him up and like her team pick him up before their team picked him up? Making me believe, I think Milner is the White Rabbit, Mr. Rabbit.
Damn.
And here's why I think it's Milner. Milner and Jessica Hyde never interact in either one. She's always staying away from her. The other thing about Milner is Milner's the one that tells Mr. Rabbit's story in both seasons, or both episodes.
Interesting.
I think, and the reason it made me think about it more this time was Milner was talking to Ian, and I think Milner is trying to basically control Ian. I can't. She said something. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she basically was like, "I want like you to like help me." Essentially, it's like she made it seem like he's this one that's kind of like maybe going to help take down Jessica Hyde, possibly. So I do think that could be her, maybe. I also have other crazy theories, but we can get back to there.
Do you think that Mr. Rabbit's identity is revealed in the comic, or do you think that's a red herring?
Well, I think it was a red
Then
herring.
maybe there's something else that is why Mr. Rabbit wants that.
I think part of it is, I don't know if his identity's revealed, and maybe it is revealed. We saw Wilson talking to Grant. We sure don't remember. It starts with an L. We end up going to that CEO guy, which could have been the red herring. It could have been like, it says it's him, even though it's not him.
I think they grabbed the first piece of evidence they found and they just jumped on it. And
Right.
I think that's good to show them go down a wrong rabbit hole. Versus in the US version, they figure out things so quickly and they figure it out right. Like
Right.
they did figure out, this phone number. Maybe you're right that is Mr. Rabbit's phone number and not, well, because Milner is Mr. Rabbit. But who knows what the significance of that is. But it definitely feels like they are very quickly as a group Scooby doing it versus like a group just clutching at straws and being like, this symbol is this group, so the CEO is head of that group, ipso facto he's Mr. Rabbit, let's take him down. And it doesn't seem like he seems like another pawn.
Does. Wait, who seems like another pawn?
The CEO of in the
Oh,
UK.
yeah. The one that Alice shot.
Yeah, so it was nice to see, instead of quick montage, 5 minutes later they've solved a puzzle.
Right.
It's nice seeing montage of going through that stuff, coming up with something, enacting a whole plan,
To be
it going
wrong.
to shit, and then being wrong.
Yeah, or wrong. I don't know. So speaking of that, one thing that we saw twice here, we saw two very detailed pages in both UK and the US of Utopia. I took a lot of notes about the US version because it was very interesting. Very interesting things that they did to sweet little Arby. So we know that, Arby, he reads it in the UK version and he reads it in the US version. And we'll get back to the Utopia. Let's talk about Arby first. I think Arby is a very interesting character. Let me just ask you this: which Arby do you like better?
I mean, I like the UK version better.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. In especially in this UK version, this I feel like they both episodes tried to make Arby look like a badass, in different ways. We see Arby that in the UK version he goes up to these basically these top guys that we've seen of this company so far. Don't think they're Mr. Rabbit, but we see him go to these people, and he like basically threatens them, and they're like they're afraid of him. They are terrified. And then in the US version, we see him fight Jessica High, and it's actually a pretty cool fight scene. I thought it was really cool, but I was kind of like,
Yes,
I don't see Arby doing this.
What was wrong with it?
What's that?
That's what was wrong with it, was that it was a cool fight scene.
Right. I was kind of like, I don't see like boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom.
they're doing some John Wick stuff, but they're not trained assassin. I mean, yes, he actually was bred to kill, but it didn't seem like
he's good with a gun.
Like martial arts academy.
Right, exactly. And we found out why his name is Arby. In the UK version, we found out why his name's Arby.
Yeah, and
Raisin Boy.
And that is such a kick, where you are so unimportant that you don't even have a name.
We gave you initials.
Your name is just a combination of initials based off of a nickname, about a trait you have.
Because you eat raisins. That's why you are Arby.
That was a kick.
And we see in these utopias that specifically written in these ones, there is a section about Arby in both of them. I think so. I will say this. I do think the US one's art style I like better, but I think, like you were saying, well, because like they both don't really look like comics. Like this one didn't look like the UK version didn't look like a comic. This one that did actually have a little bit of words. I don't know if you saw that.
I was going to say, I did. I was seeing more panels on a page, and some kind of transitions between them. It still wasn't. They didn't like plot out the whole story and say, where is it going from here to there. It did feel more like a legitimate comic, though.
Did you happen to see some of those frames of what they did to Arby?
Not very closely.
It's sad. There's like one where there is so basically there is a picture of him with like this big lizard tail, Arby, implying that he's a monster, I would say. The other, and that was after these other panels. One of the panels was him literally being waterboarded. They're legitimately waterboarding him. The other one is that shows Arby, they point a gun to his head, and it goes bang, and the little flag comes out, meaning he's unflinching. Like, there's nothing that he's afraid of. He's not afraid of dying. And he sees that. Now, an interesting thing also in that one in the US one. I didn't see as much in the UK one that I could dissect from, but Arby and Jessica Hyde are put in a barrel together. Looks like they're trying to hide. I don't know if this was the house that they're talking about living in or whatever, but it does seem like Arby and Jessica Hyde knew each other when they were young. And I think that was kind of heavily implied a little bit. But also we see this, uh, barrel that they're put in that has this like symbol on it. It could be the symbol of whatever Simpro. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. The things that it looked like for me was like ovaries. It kind of looked like ovaries or a T or like a cow head. And there was all these other figures around with it that had different animal heads, which I thought was interesting. Don't know what it means, but I think
There's
we're
some
gonna
interesting.
get some more for the US version, at least a little bit more into that.
And I'm sure the US version has more panels that they will, you know, almost fetishingly show to us.
Mm-hmm.
They really take time with those shots to really show you a good amount of detail. But going back to Arby, I think I've really liked seeing the journey in the UK version because I feel like they teased him out more. So the interesting thing is I think that his mannerisms aren't quite as big in the UK version. So it's easy for you to not really notice that he's a little bit off in the UK version. That first episode, I don't think you might have noticed that he has asthma, which is weird to have for an assassin. I don't want
Right.
to I don't want to say that you if you have
Wow.
certain disabilities you shouldn't have certain jobs.
Wow, you're saying that
But,
if you have asthma, you cannot be an assassin. Take that off your resume. You cannot be an assassin if you have asthma.
but it's one of those things where they made his traits very subtle. So and you saw the two people murder first scene of the first one of the UK one. And so it definitely made them seem badass, scary, people to worry about. And it took a while before you kind of saw that, I don't know, there's something weird about this guy. He's got a shuffle to his walk, which seems weird for an assassin. You think that you'd have somebody who's, very light footed rather than somebody who's got like an odd shuffle and has asthma. And so it feels like gradually over time you saw these tiny things that just seemed a little bit off before it finally started coming together versus the the US one. I think with his voice and his mannerisms he could have just seemed odd, but he like right off the bat he seemed different, no questions. And that could have just been, well, he's a psychopath. But he definitely right off the bat seemed different to me.
I think that has, like you're saying, how they introduced him. Like the first one, or sorry, first one, UK version, he's very much like, most of the time, all he says is, "Where's Jessica Hyde?" That's it. Like, that's all he says. Where
Right.
is Jessica Hyde? The US version, the first thing we do is we see him. You're late. You're late for showing up. Like, clearly he's very punctual. Like he's very got to be on time. You already know. You kind of see these interesting things. Second episode, same thing. He tells Wilson's grandpa or dad. He's like,
What was the point of that you're late scene, by the way?
padding, baby. That's what the US is best at. Let's
It
put
was
some padding.
just
You're late. We're only late because you're not getting in the car. That guy dies later, and Arby doesn't even matter. It was a very silly scene. Where the introduction
Yeah.
in the other one, they're looking for
Yep.
Utopia, and they
Yep.
kill people
Yep.
right off the bat.
And I guess my issue with the US one right there is, if they're world building, that would be one thing, but they were world building of a character that was killed off very quickly, who's supposed to be a bad guy. So I don't really care. I don't need it.
Right, right. Lot of
I just I'm
padding.
sorry, I derailed you. You were going through an arc. Hopefully, you can keep on or continue a different direction. But
Listen, there is no. We're having a conversation. I'm not on a tangent. There's no derailing. We're going. We're on a train and we're going, and wherever we end, that's our destination. You know. You didn't derail me. I don't remember what I was saying. I don't know what we were talking about. What show are we talking about? Okay, so I have some things that I've noticed
okay,
that are interesting. So we were talking about the little girl, Alice. What does Alice follow in Alice in Wonderland?
a rabbit.
A rabbit. So in my mind, I was wondering, you know, I don't know how much we're going to focus on Alice. We just saw her kill somebody. Just that whole thing. I can't just, here, hold this gun to the little girl.
Well, I
Shoots
mean,
it.
that was a kid making that decision.
Well,
In
don't give it to Grant. Why did she give it to Grant?
Grant seemed, because shit's going down over by the door, so they need everybody over there. And Grant seems
They don't need
capable enough
Becky.
that,
They got Ian and Wilson. They don't need Becky over there. Becky can be the responsible adult to hold the gun at this guy. But he got.
yeah, that was
So, back to that Alice theory and the rabbit. Part of me was wondering if these characters were all characters from Alice in Wonderland. And, I was trying to, think, who would be what? Maybe Jessica Hyde's, the Cheshire Cat, in a way, where she's kind of, chaotic. We never know what she's going to do. She's just kind of, sending... it would have worked better if Alice was from the beginning, not towards the end of the show. But it was making me kind of think of all these different things. And it brought me to finding the good fairy, right? And who is the good fairy?
who is the good fairy?
No. In pop culture, who is the good fairy? What is the good fairy from?
She, from Peter Pan. No, sorry,
There-
I'm being dumb.
No, you're not dumb. There is a fairy in Peter Pan. Her name is Tinkerbell. She is not the good fairy. She's kind of a brat.
Glinda the Good Witch.
Glinda the Good Witch from Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
How many main characters are there that aren't Dorothy? Grant, Ian, Wilson.
Toto doesn't count.
Huh?
Toto
Toto-
doesn't count.
Toto's Grant.
Toto's Grant.
So, hear me out. Ready? I got this.
Okay, yeah.
Jessica Hyde's Dorothy, right? She's trying to figure out... well, maybe she is. Maybe. We'll come back to that. We don't know if that's correct or not. But we got Cowardly Lion. Ian from the US one is Cowardly Lion, in a way. Becky, I would say, has more of, the heart, like the Tin Man. And Wilson technically has the brains, the Scarecrow needed the brains, but so they all kind of have these things. Jessica Hyde's Dorothy, Grant's Toto, and this is all me just speculating wildly. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I was thinking, I was like, they keep saying Alice, Rabbit, Alice and the White Rabbit, and every time we see him in the books, Utopia, he's depicted as a white rabbit. Follow the white rabbit. We got Alice. But I don't know any other characters that fit alongside that.
I think the more interesting thing that I want to come back to is your point on Milner, and I don't know if it's necessarily correct, but I do think that there is a grain of truth there. Speaking of Harvest, do you think there is a grain of truth there? Because in both cases, she's very limited with her help. And normally the good guys, they'll take anything that they can get from people that are willing to help them, and they will give any help that they can to people that will help them out. And she's like, you don't have a comic, you're no good to like come to me when you have Jessica Hyde, come to me when you have a comic. Otherwise, good luck.
Yeah, like, because what does her having those things do? Just seems like she wants those things. And it seems to me that if Milner, who is this top person in the, I think CIA or MI5, I'm not sure which one's which and where, um, if she was this person in this high up agency, like that would make a lot of sense of how, like, in especially the US version, how Harvest is doing a lot of things, because the way they paint Harvest in the US version is that it was like a just a group after 9/11 that was formed, and that's like 22 years. You're not going to have this like giant group that runs the world right after like that. It just that kind of doesn't make sense. Where it's like the Cold War, there was a whole division that had no rules and could get away with it whatever it wants. Like, this person, if she's part of this, seems like she could get like a sick dying girl in the red zone of the US version that they could switch out whenever and bring in the other guy. Like, there's all these things that, like, from what I'm gathering of like John Cusack's character, like another reason why I don't think he might not be Mr. Rabbit is because what is he like? He has his things that he's running and doing, but he's not. I don't see him able to pull the strings like that. Like, he got raided by the FBI. You know, he wanted it to be an attack on him, but yet he could still pull these strings of these dying kids and getting the doctors in. And
But what if she is, what if it's not that the FBI is all bad, but she is with the FBI and she happens to be bad secretly because
well,
we
Milner is
did,
not FBI.
or she CIA, what,
Yeah, but the FBI raided Simpro.
but she even made a comment in, I think, the UK one about it was going to be difficult for her to hide what she was doing when she basically covered for Ian,
Right.
and she managed to keep him out of harm's way. She made a comment about it was going to be difficult for her to like cover that up, which means it doesn't seem like that's on the books.
Right. And why
Which
would it be on the books? Like, if the CIA is this top organization, or MI6 is like this top organization trying to bring this company, thing down, why wouldn't they take everybody in protective custody and be like, we'll take care of you? I can't remember how we found Milner in the UK version.
in the UK version,
I do remember, actually.
good.
I think they just called like the thing. They were like, "Hey, can we just talk to this person?"
Oh, that's
They
yes.
were just like,
That yeah,
"Hey, can we talk to them? We need help with this person. Can we talk to them?" And then they were like, "Oh, they don't work here." And then they called her back.
right. Yep.
Um, man, I'm really leaning into. I think that Milner is Mr. Rabbit, because I don't think it's the guy that I had kind of originally was thinking that was talking to RB in the UK version. He just seems so
The
like
fact that they were so scared of Arby was
that's what
crazy.
right. That's what made me kind of go like, I don't think.
So, you know what else was crazy about that?
Hmm.
Didn't they tell him where Jessica Hyde was?
I don't remember if they said where Jessica Hyde was. I remember he asked where Jessica Hyde was.
And it seemed to me like they agreed and were going to tell him,
Oh, maybe. I might
which
have missed that
means,
part.
so the impression that I got is they know where the group is. And for whatever reason, they are letting them do their thing for right now.
Interesting. Because Arby does find Jessica Hyde at the end. Like, he sees her. Where is Jessica Hyde? Oh, you're here. You gonna take me to Utopia? That's the plan. He's just like, yeah, that's the plan. That's the other thing I wrote down that I think that what if Arby is the good fairy?
Interesting.
Um, though in the art that we've seen of the good fairy from the US version, it is depicted as a woman.
And we have seen Arby as well separately from.
We've seen Arby as a little kid in those, so I don't necessarily think he is the good fairy. Um, but it when Arby first meets Jessica Hyde in the US version, one I did think it was kind of lame where he was like, "Here is Jessica Hyde. Where's Jessica Hyde? Here is Jessica Hyde." One thing I did like about the US one that I thought was very stylistic was him making the peanut butter jelly sandwich. Arby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then sending her off with it, which is a very school lunch thing to do.
Right, cutting off the crust. But it seemed
Yep.
also like he did it because he maybe knew that she liked that she didn't want crust on her sandwich.
You know, it's hard for me to at this point to separate, some of the issues that I've had with the show. And so I do think that I look at it with a slightly more critical eye, and therefore maybe don't appreciate some of the better things. I did think that the US show is getting better. I
Agreed.
think as I think it's picking up pace. They've set some they've set some things up that are kind of paying off. I still don't think it's worth the bloat that they've had, but it's definitely picking up. It's definitely going really interesting directions. But instead of thinking that was a beautiful scene, what I thought about what with that scene was, this isn't his house. Why is he being so skimpy with the peanut butter? It was like it was like a teaspoon of peanut butter that he was trying to spread out over that bread. And it's like, look, I get it. If it's your own house, inflation, things cost a lot. You got to be careful with your resources. But this is literally somebody else's house. He's murdered most of the inhabitants. He's broken into the fridge. And where he's going to draw the line is his consumption of it's not even for him, it's for somebody else. Like,
You wanna know what else is funny about that scene? So right before that, I think it's that one. Yeah, yeah, it's the US version. He kills Alice's mom, right? She's upset. He's like got the gun to her. He doesn't want to kill her. We he said we finally see this like humanity of Arby, where he did just kill her mom, but he's kind of drawing a line like, hey, I'm not going to kill this little girl this time.
right.
Which the UK Arby didn't even get that choice. Um, he basically had to be bribed with Utopia to get Alice out of there. Where this Arby, the US version, he has decided to not kill. And I do think that the UK version showed that like switch to humanity a little bit more, where like the UK one is he read a book, he read the Utopia, and he's like, oh, the lights are on now. I totally get it. This is me. Like, it doesn't say it's him. He's just like, this is me. But the best part is when he takes Alice and he walks in to the kitchen, like right before he's about to make that sandwich, and there's a whole kitchen table right there, right when they enter that first door, and he says, sit. She walks past the whole table and goes sits on a beanbag chair way over in the corner. And I was like, okay, I guess he wasn't very clear about it, but you would assume when you're like first walking in, if you're told to sit, you're gonna sit at the first chair you can. You're not gonna go, I'm gonna go walk past these chairs. What if he doesn't know I'm gonna go sit on the beanbag chair? He just shoots me for going on a beanbag chair.
Right. Psychopath tells you to sit.
Right. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just go sit right over there. That's fine. I'll go walk down this kitchen and look like I'm walking away from him and go sit on this beanbag chair. Also, why is there a beanbag chair in the kitchen? That makes no sense. Who puts their beanbag chairs there?
What do you do with a beanbag chair? You can't
get out of them.
From it. You can't have a non-awkward conversation with anybody that's at the table. Like, what?
Yeah, it's like the beanbag chair is just randomly in the kitchen. It's not close to the chairs. It, like, makes no sense why it's there. She walks past it. Okay. We do like to give the US one a hard time. There was another scene, and I can't remember where they were going into. There was a sign that had a picture of, like, it had the circle with the crossed out gun, and it said no trespassing. And it was just like, why would you have the picture of the no guns and no trespassing? Like, if you can trespass somewhere, who's checking for guns? You know, it was it was such a weird sign. It was like, no guns allowed. No, but it didn't say no guns allowed. It was just the picture of the, like, you know, like, don't smoke, the no smoking sign. It was that with guns and no trespassing. I would think that it would be like, it would show a person there if you're trying to say no trespassing, but why no guns? I thought this was America. This is the US version. Why does it say no guns? I want to know. I have the right to carry a gun. Second Amendment, read it. No, we're in Chicago. We know we're in Chicago. We know every person has a gun in Chicago. Why are you going to say no guns? Why are you going to have this sign and then say no trespassing? Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't quite add up.
Does not, unfortunately, but it's still good. It's still, like you said, it is getting better. I do think there is, you know, it is trying to do a little bit of the stylized shots. I don't think it does it as well as the UK version, of course. But
Although with the UK version, I have noticed a pattern with, so some of my favorite of their stylized shots, I've noticed that they've done this type of shot a lot of times. So when they have a road off in the distance, or they have the house that they're going to be off in the distance, they will have a shot very low to the ground with whatever the top of the plant is right at camera level. So it's looking straight across, whether it's like grass, corn, whatever it is almost a straight line with really nice wide field of focus to the point where you can see the majority of it, even though there's stuff super close in focus and things very far, you know, and it ends up being this kind of, they always pick contrasty colors, you know, so it's, you know, like vibrant green or, you know, the yellow of the corn or whatever. Really gorgeous, but I did notice that is the type of shot that is in there a number of times in the UK. So that's, somebody's like nailed that shot and they're like, we're gonna get a bunch of these in.
Every episode at least, maybe twice an episode. Why not? We're lucky.
3 times an episode in one of them. Yeah.
Still beats the lens flare though, because I saw a lot more lens flare in the US one, especially with all the press people out there and the Simpro guy coming up, John Cusack's character. A lot of lens flare there going on there. They love their lens flare.
They the UK one does it just as much. They just do it better.
They do it better.
That's the crap part. Is I hate to, like, sometimes we'll be talking badly about something that the US version does, and it's also something the UK version does, but it's, it comes down to nailing it or not. And if you don't nail something very stylistic, I think it comes off as distracting.
Agreed.
If something like that is stylistic and it can actually enhance and add something, it can actually bring something to the table, then it's an addition instead of a subtraction.
Agreed.
I mean, to some extent, that the lens flare in the US shows, like when you've got a bad extra.
Yeah, that's just like just sitting in the background.
and you pan across and you end up like paying attention, and then you're like, who the hell is this?
What is this guy
random? And then you realize that, like, you missed the first sentence that the main character is saying. It's like, oh, damn it.
What do you think about the sound design of the US version?
I don't know if I've
and
really...
that was a trick question, because there is no sound. Well, I mean, there might be, but I don't notice it in the US version.
I haven't really given it much thought. I've noticed some really cool, interesting music in the UK one.
There's one repeating one that I love, actually, that it goes like that. It's like always this like weird like
yes,
and it comes every time, and it's like when the gang's up to something, we hear like well, we don't hear that in the US version. There's none of that. That's why I did try to give you that trick question there. I haven't noticed any music in the US one. I'm sure there is one, but it's probably just like a flat sound, maybe.
They have done it a few times when a scene is kind of picked up. They put in, but the UK one, the music feels like it is more integrated. Like there are a number of scenes that have music that really help set the scene.
Agreed.
Versus in the US, it's not often, and it's not as, and it's generally also, I don't feel like it's like they have a composer. Like it's oftentimes known tracks that they're putting in. Versus a lot of the music in the UK one, you can tell that there is a composer that's actually written this.
Right.
And it's really accentuating the scene.
Mm-hmm.
This is proprietary music that is kind of helping to drive the story along.
I have another thing that we can circle back to that I forgot to talk about earlier, was Jessica Hyde. We haven't really spoke about Jessica Hyde, and I have some things about Jessica Hyde. One, in the US version, very interesting with her and Grant. First off, she's mean to him again, like right off the bat, and then later they're going to Alice's house and they have to sneak into the bar, and now they're playing video games. They're best friends again. Oh, you missed that one. I was just like, does it, like, choose? Are they friends or not friends? Because, even though in the UK version, she definitely like threatens him, kind of like, I could take it from you, or, whatever. And, he was really drunk at that point, and, maybe he doesn't remember it, but like when he first sees Jessica Hyde, he like hugs her. He like runs up and hugs her, and she kind of like, hugs him back, but then kind of like pushes him away. She's like, that's like that better, like, does she like him? Does she not like him? It's like, did she feel like she was forced to hug him? But like this other Jessica Hyde, she's just mean to him, and then now they're best friends at the video game arcade. I don't, I just, I feel like the Jessica Hyde is a lot less likable in the U.S. version. I don't think she's really likable in the UK version, but she's a lot more likable than the US version.
I actually I think I do like her in the UK one. I don't know exactly what her deal is, but it feels to me like there are reasons for her decision. She seems like a person driven to these extremes, versus the US one seems like she might naturally be mentally unstable, and then on top of that she's going through crazy stuff which has made her like a feral cat, you know?
Yeah,
So, so that's kind of like a bad combo of, okay, well, you already are mentally unstable and you're going through something that's going to get you even more unhinged. How am I
right.
supposed to trust somebody like that? And so then I don't know. So when she finally started to get into a position where I did think she was making some connections rather than just forcing people to do what she wanted, it's unfortunately didn't quite hit because I was already kind of turned off to her.
Yeah, and I mean, I still kind of am turned off to her in a lot of ways because, she talks about, like, you know, Grant and, or not Grant, Ian and Becky, her and have their little thing or whatever, and she's like, no sex. You can't have sex. I don't. If the harvest come in, the worst place for me to be is with a dick in me. Like, okay, well, yeah, right. That's a pretty bad place to be. And then, like, you see the other Jessica Hyde, where, like, she's probably, they've gone through the same thing, and she, like, makes Ian kiss her. Like, she comments on their date and is like, that's a cute date, like, blah, 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 blah. And then she, like, kisses Ian, like, kind of, like, forces him to kiss her. And it's like, I feel like that was, like, one was kind of showing, like, both were showing that she, like, is not having relations with people, and, like, one was like she saw Ian go on a date with Becky, and she wanted a little bit of a connection, it seemed like, so she's kissing Ian and to, like, maybe feel something, not feel something. Where the other Jessica Hyde, she's like, she just shuts everything down. It's like, I've never had that experience. I'm never gonna have that experience. I don't want that experience. It's the end of the experiences.
It's also kind of an interesting contrast of, the US one I think likes to be a little vulgar and kind of catch you off guard that way.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of opening to, I think it was episode 3, where she's peeing standing up, forcing everybody to watch. It's a really awkward scene.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like that's the same thing with that comment about no sex, like, and the comment about, like, how hard it would be to get out of that situation when you've got that in you. Um, just paints a mental picture that is just kind of extreme, versus the UK one does the same thing in a much more sensible way that really makes sense. In, I think it was maybe episode 2, when she said no showers, no baths, and it's for the same reason. Like, that's, you can easily get caught off guard and you're naked. Like, how are you supposed to run
Well,
away
and we saw
when
that.
you're trapped upstairs? And we saw it, and so that paid off, and that made absolute sense.
Right.
And that's something that you do on a daily basis. So that's something that you would be doing, you know, at least once a day, every single day, where you're putting yourself in this position where you're in a dangerous situation, and that's, so she's doing the same kind of thing, but it makes more sense narratively to the story, and it isn't putting a weird image in my mind. Like, I just don't need to think of the
Right.
U.S. Jessica Hyde in that kind of situation.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And
It's just jarring imagery.
it was just unnecessary, and like, I think that's part of the problem. It's like I feel like I can empathize with the Jessica Hyde of the UK version more. Like I'm like, this girl's gone through some shit. She's trying to stay alive. She's trying to, figure it out. Where the other one just seems mean, gruff, and I understand why they went that way, but like I just haven't seen like any redeeming qualities yet, of the US one, and we still have time to go. Like, and I think they're trying to like show the redeeming qualities in this way with like, where she's playing the video game with Grant. But I'm kind of like, it's such a short moment. There's nothing like, this moment doesn't really feel earned. It just feels like you're kind of schizophrenic or, sorry, I not to be ableist here. I'm not trying to say what any mental issue on her. I'm just saying that sometimes she's happy, sometimes she's not happy. Oh no, oh you disappeared. Oh, you're back. Sometimes she's nice, sometimes she's not nice. It's just kind of like we never know what we're gonna get next with this Jessica Hyde.
Yeah, she's like a crazy 8 ball.
Crazy 8 ball. We never know where she's gonna go. She's gonna go. I'm gonna say corner pocket. She'll be in the side pocket. We don't.
Well, I meant like a magic 8 ball. Like you shake it up, you never know what response you're gonna get. But
yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
You said they're all crazy responses. So it's like peeing, standing up while everybody's watching.
Yeah, she's super anti-texting. Like, oh, don't text. It's just like, okay.
Curling up under a sink.
Yeah.
The one moment where we see her get emotional, we can't see her face, so we can actually, because that's like the window to the soul. That's where I think you really connect, is when you see. It's easy to see somebody bawling, but I think what's really tough is when somebody tries to hold it back. When you see somebody struggling with that emotion, and we could have had a moment where we could have seen her in a very human situation. She finds out her dad is dead, and she crawls under a sink. I can't connect with that.
Yeah. I mean, technically we did see her cry first in the car. We saw her very emotionally, but it was just screaming. And
Right.
We had Wilson making another joke. Oh, her dad got dusted. Oh, good one, Wilson. Great joke. Yeah, so
Dean Wilson also seems a little out of place at times at point. Like he doesn't. I don't know if he didn't love this role, or if he doesn't quite have the chops for something like this, or maybe it was the director getting him to do things that he maybe shouldn't. But I don't always understand why his character is doing what he's doing, and I feel like his portrayal is part of it. There's the one scene where they were in the diner and he has the whipped cream going on the pancakes. He has this weird gleeful look on his face that is just so out of place with this weird situation that is going on, that
I don't even know if I remember that scene.
it was when he was in the diner and he met all the other people that were that scene opened with like pancakes on the table. It's like zoom in on pancakes. The server puts a ton of whipped cream on top, and then it like pans out.
What
so
are you
can,
talking about?
U.S. Rainn Wilson.
Oh, Rainn Wilson.
Not Wilson. Wait,
I heard you. I thought you said Wade Wilson, and I was like, Wilson. I know what you mean now. I get it with the yep. Okay, yep. We're on the same track.
I don't get his character, and I don't think he has it's a great portrayal. I do like I like Cusack.
Well, Cusack's a great actor.
something very interesting, but Rainn Wilson's portrayal at times is just kind of baffling. How easily, as a scientist, he's swayed to do this test on this girl, and then how quickly he changes to, you know, to their side of, yeah, I saw this one example. Like that's how science works, is
Yeah.
10 to the size of one, you know?
No more children have to die.
It's just it doesn't it doesn't make I mean the writing doesn't make sense, but then his portrayal doesn't help the writing at all. You know, versus I feel the same thing about Cusick's character, where the writing isn't always perfect, but he at least has a very good portrayal of that. Here's an unfortunate thing, and I can't really I can't hold this against the US version because it's not their fault. There's no way that they could have known that there would have been a pandemic this huge that came not that long after their show came out.
Unless
And for
Utopia
me,
is real.
unless Utopia is real, it has ruined so many scenes where I watch them and it is just, we learned so much more about pandemics than we ever will want to in our lives, since we're not going to school for them. I definitely didn't want to learn about them this way. But to some extent, we're all mini experts. And now, because we're all mini experts about pandemics, there are things that just, for me, make no sense. What are your thoughts?
Definitely agree. The thing that doesn't make sense the most to me is I don't think that we'd get a bunch of people working on board with this right away. You know, not everybody would be on the same page and being like, yeah, let's try and quarantine this. You'd have so many people being like, it's fake. It's not real. What are we doing? Why are we wasting our time doing this? And I just feel like I mean, granted, it could have been different. However, you know, like I feel like the scales of these pandemics are, you know, like the starting point, like they're a little bit localized in a way.
Right. I
But
think these might be outbreaks instead of pandemics, but they still deal with, vaccines being rolled out on a national level, whether or not the government should or could fast track them. Who makes those decisions? A bunch of things are just, and then how on board people would be.
right, and it just
The the scene where all the people watching join John Cusick down on their knee, or whoever it was that went down on their knee to start it off,
John Cusack, yeah.
and they're all, it just, they're basically, saying like, give me the vaccine, and it just doesn't make sense.
You know, it's funny. I wrote that on my notes. I'm like, man, I just wish that like 50 people could kneel and chant and beg, you know, at whoever's the higher up that's in charge at that time, and just get everything to happen the way they want it to happen. All you have to do, you just have to get on your knees and yell at them and just beg, please, please, please. And then you know what they do? They feel guilty inside, and then they say, no more kids have to die.
Right.
Which also is another culty thing. You know, they showed like John Cusack was, you know, doing like that kind of like kneeling and yelling and, you know, crying, and he got everybody around him to do it. It's kind of like that another example of that culty religious aspect of this. And most of those people wouldn't believe in vaccines.
And an interesting thing with that whole kind of culty angle of it is, it seems like they are all willing to make the sacrifice. Even to the point where Cusack's son makes a comment about the fact that he thinks that some people feel that John Cusack treats his son differently and wouldn't be willing to let him do the hard thing.
Well,
You
yeah.
know, so that the impression I got there is everybody has to be willing to take one for the team. That is it's all for a higher purpose. So
Right.
it's not even like you're drawing the short straw. It's to some extent it's like you're part of the master plan. It's not like, oh no, I got the girls are excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
The twins, they get last meal. They're so excited about all that stuff, and you can see when the one gets chosen that there are a wash of emotions. Those were actually some of the best actors I felt in it. With
Oh,
the twins.
I
Like I
agree.
felt like the scene where one of them gets picked to to take the biscuit, whatever, the wafer, you could see all these things processing as she was chosen, and there are hints of fear. Like she's definitely not, she's not so brainwashed that she 100% is like, there's no other feelings, I'm all about this. That is the main thing. She is that this is a cult, she is all in, and she definitely goes for it, and she does end at that kind of like happiness elation.
Yeah, like
But you
I
can
get to.
see emotions like processing and washing as it gets to that point.
Yeah, and she even said she's like, I get to like help the world. Like I get to do my part. Like I get to do this thing, and it was so great. And even that I would say the dad had the hardest time like committing to it. Like he did, but like he was like feeling like so sad. Like and she was like, "You're not my dad. You're just a caretaker or whatever. Like you knew this was gonna happen. Like."
You shouldn't have given us names.
Yeah, shouldn't have given us names. That was your fault. Like, why did you name us? We don't deserve names. Give us the initials, T1 and T2, RB. Um,
Right.
the so I might not be remembering correctly, but didn't John Cusack say that when he was talking about the son and the special treatment? Didn't he say that you were a twin in the womb. You ate your brother, and didn't he say, "I don't know if I could have chosen"? Did he say that, or did he say that he would choose? I couldn't remember. I can't remember.
I think he maybe said something like, I don't know if I could have chosen.
Right, like he's like, if it was you, and I don't know if I could have been able to make that decision. And I thought that's interesting. Like I think that we saw that Kara from the previous episode was dealing with that, like, oh, this is hitting close to home. I don't want to go through with this anymore. And then with him, he's kind of like, but he did talk in a way where he was like, I knew her since she was a kid, and I saw her grow up, and I saw her do great things, and I knew she had it in her to be the best of what we needed. And still he was kind of like, but she lost her way, and we had to take care of her. Like, seems pretty ruthless unless it's with his son. And we don't see any of his other family. Wife that we saw that one time, all those other kids, we don't need them. We don't need to watch them. We don't need to see them. They're just gone. Just the brother. Dad. Or son. Older
Yeah.
son.
Yeah. I don't know what the point of that was, whether or not they wanted to show that he had this big family and how caring he was for them, and then that scene of like around the table, and then once they'd established that he's a good family man, they like threw all the other actors in the garbage. They're like, we're done with you, we only have parts for the oldest son.
The oldest son. Who's Mr. Rabbit? New theory. He's Mr. Rabbit.
Do you think we've seen Mr. Rabbit? Are you still?
I am more leaning now towards that. Like, I think they were trying to make you think in the UK version and the US version, that it was,
The
US
two guys in the
version.
dark room.
Well, the two guys in the dark room, or even the like that head guy of the bill of the
Oh yeah.
thing. One of those three guys. The UK version really makes you think that, and I think the US is really trying to like. Remember when I made that first assumption where I was like, okay, I think it's John Cusack because why would you get a high named actor to play this part? And I think that he's not. I think he's the red herring where you're supposed to be like, oh, John Cusack is the he's Mr. Rabbit. Clearly, we're gonna find that out clearly that it's him. But I'm thinking more likely now that it's they want to have that shock factor. I feel like that's both shows kind of like to have that like, oh hey, this is a crazy moment. I didn't expect that. So I am thinking it's not those characters, and I think I am gonna say that I think it's Milner. We
Okay.
haven't seen Milner a lot. We But Milner's still part of it, like Milner's in both of them, like I feel like in the UK version, we saw her that little bit and then she's kind of gone, but the next episode we see her again. We didn't see Milner in the US version this time, but we saw her in the previous one, and it was such a brief time. And you know Wilson didn't meet her in the US version. I don't know if that matters to anything. But he did meet her in the UK version. So I think I'm gonna say that I think Milner is Mr. Rabbit.
I I like that idea. I mean, as I kind of said before, it there are things that she is doing that seem like they are not on official business, which then makes you wonder if he's public enemy number one, then why would catching him not be a main priority?
Right.
But if she is him, well,
That's
we just assume it's a him, you know?
well, and that could be the another red herring. Mr. Rabbit
Mr. Rabbit, yeah.
is a guy where you would never expect a girl to be Mr. Rabbit. Milner.
That's a really good twist. And then, you are working for the government, you seem like the good guy, but you are getting the actual good guys to do your dirty work of bringing you what you need so that you don't have to.
And the UK version. So we talked about who was a big focus on in this episode was Alice, right?
Yes.
Which is connected to the White Rabbit. And if Milner is this, if Milner is Mr. Rabbit, then we have another case of the rabbit leading Ian down a different path, just like Alice in Wonderland. Because she makes it seem like, Ian, I need you to do this. Like, I need you to take it. Like, I need you on my side in there. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for them to take, if Milner is Mr. Rabbit, great writing. Great writing.
Right.
You set it up. You had the White Rabbit. You set the main character on a journey. Could be. Could be. I don't know.
Interesting. We'll find out, I think, a lot more the next episode. So next week, we're watching one episode, US
One
only.
episode.
So it's not going to be compare and contrast.
It will be US episode 6.
It still needs a little bit more catching up to do. Once we've done that, then we'll have only 2 episodes of each, and so it'll be much easier for us to watch, the second to last of each, and then the last of each. I think the stories are going to dovetail much better together when we do that.
I think
So
so
that
too.
is the plan.
Yes. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. We've had a great time with you guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that bell for notifications. Just kidding. But seriously, do it.
No, we're not kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
Seriously, do that actually.
really kidding.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Have fun. Where's Jessica Hyde?